Alrighty, we're gonna get started here. Bill is absent today, he is sick. So I guess I'm gonna take over for the night. I'm gonna do call to order and roll call. Chisman?
Present.
Leffler?
Present.
McSparen is absent. Myers, myself here. Thompson?
Here.
First thing we need to do is amend the consent, or the agenda, and all we're gonna do is move old business to the top, right underneath consent agenda.
I make a motion to move old business to the top of the agenda below consent agenda.
I will second that motion.
Is this your pen? No, it went with the notepad, she said.
No, it's back here. It's that pen.
Oh, that's yours?
This one's yours?
Leffler.
Sorry about that. That's fine.
Leffler. Motion. Chisman second. To amend consent, or to amend the agenda. As old business to be moved under consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Experiments would be opposed. All, 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Need to do roll call. Chisman.
Present.
Leffler.
Present.
McSparen, absent. Myers, present. Thompson.
Yeah.
The agenda is amended. Consent agenda.
Again, we're still working without fund balances, so, I will make a motion to approve the minutes from last month. If we piece that out. Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm going to change my long-standing practice and vote to approve these. The reason that I voted against approving the warrants that were rolled in the consent agenda is because we didn't have any fund balances. And I think the point has been made that each and every one of us sitting at this table tonight know that we've got to get fund balances. And I think we have to pay our bills, so I'm flip-flopping, if you want to call it that. I'm going to vote that we accept it, and that's kind of...
Well, first we have to vote on, or take a second, or ask for a second on his motion. And if there is no second, and then you make a motion, then we can approve that motion.
Okay.
Since he already made the motion, we have to go with that first.
Can I rescind my motion?
Yes.
I rescind my motion.
Okay then.
Well, it's time we start paying our bills, and it was a protest against the way we were operating, and now we're going to have to fix those problems. So.
And I understand that completely, but I still don't think we know where we're at necessarily financially completely.
I
I'm going to
agree.
steadfastly hold my ground on it.
I agree with you. I don't know either, but I think we're going to have to start paying these bills and put a little more effort into finding out where we are.
Will we have fund balances today, or do we have fund balances today?
We do not have fund balances today, but they are still in progress.
Okay,
We're still looking for some missing information, so.
sounds good. So you making a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Chisman to approve the consent agenda. Okay, second. Second by Donna Thompson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
3 in favor, 2 opposed. Consent agenda approved. Old business. The reason we moved old business is we have him here tonight to discuss the financial status. And he will take questions after his presentation, and the questions will be limited to 2 minutes, and they have to stay on subject. So,
Ready to go?
go ahead.
All right. And just for the record, I'm Ted Nelson. I'm with the Iowa Department of Management. My primary job for the state of Iowa is regulating city budgets, along with township budgets and other miscellaneous little taxing districts throughout the state. Like Jason said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll take them from both the council and from the public. There may be some things that you ask that I don't know, so be prepared for me to give you a dumb look and say I don't know. So. But with that, we'll forge ahead. I just got a little presentation together because I wasn't exactly sure what was needed down here, but I thought we would just kind of give a general overview of where things are at and where kind of the choke points are and what the problems are. So, starting with the comparison, one of the bigger problems that I found when I just started looking at the city of Blakesburg was what was being spent to what was being budgeted, right? So the left-hand column is the actual budget that was submitted to the state of Iowa and to Wapello County. The right-hand side is what was reported at the end of the year in actual expenditures. And I'm just looking at the expenditure side because that's the side the city can control. Revenues are often outside the city's control, so we kind of just let those go where they go. You can't make people pay their bills. So the actual side, you can see the red items are items where it was overspent, okay? So you can see some of those are pretty high overspendings. To the best of my knowledge, there was no amending done, and that's a problem for the council to straighten out, is if you're going to overstep the authority granted to you by the citizens in the budget, it has to be reauthorized through a public hearing and a vote of the council after the public hearing. So make sure that that's adhered to this year. This one is a little bit more skewed than most because I believe this year there were some pretty big capital expenditures for the sewer system. You can see with the business type, that's your utility expenditures, so water, sewer, garbage. And that one is much higher, and a lot of that is probably offset by borrowed money. So it's not quite as out of whack as it looks. The next year, 2014-15, much better, but there was still a significant overspend in the general government column, or in the general government line items. So we continued. And then 16, there was a lot of overspending. So public works, culture and rec, general government, debt service, and business type enterprise were all overspent without getting a new authorization through an amendment. Okay? I present that just to kind of show where the problem lies. The problem lies mainly in the fact that there's not enough oversight of what's being spent out in any given month. So that's the number one thing that needs to be cured before anything else can be cured, is a good grasp of financial management. Somebody taking revenues, taking expenditures each month and presenting a report to the council. And as I understand, that hasn't been happening. So I would push for that to happen as quickly as possible. And that's something, if there's a training deficiency, I'm more than happy to help with that. I know it's a personnel issue right now. There's no clerk. So once that gets straightened out, we can straighten out this issue. Now, there's just kind of a statement of what I've already told you. The overages were $563,000 in that first year, and remember that was capital project expenditures most likely, so it was probably partially balanced out by borrowed money. The next year was $20,000 over, and then we went back at $325,000 over budget. So those are the items that need to get cured. Now, for governmental accounting, you keep your money in funds. Think of funds as just buckets. So you got buckets that you're dropping your money into because your money comes from certain sources. Those certain sources have a law attached to them that says how you can spend your money. Okay, some money is general, meaning it can be spent for any lawful purpose. That's the general fund up there. Now, when the general fund goes negative, that's usually a very bad sign. So that we would want to get corrected as quickly as possible. General fund was down in 13, and this is out of the audit that has been issued today. The audit was issued this morning. It's in the mail. You guys will receive it tomorrow or Wednesday, depending on the mail. It'll be posted online on Wednesday, so I've been told by the auditor of state. So that was the year that was still being audited. It was 2012-13. That's why I started there. And as I'm working fund balances for the city, that's where I'm starting from, because that's the last hard numbers that we have that are really solid. So you can see there the general fund was negative money already. Special revenue, which is your RUT, is road use taxes. So that's the money to maintain your streets. And then lost is local option sales tax. So you get a certain amount out of the 1% sales tax, the 1 cent sales tax countywide. Those funds were barely above water, which is not terribly concerning, because usually in a town this size, those get spent to zero almost every year. That's not out of the ordinary. Debt service was over, so that was good. Proprietary was still up, but most of that you can see was in the sewer. So water was running about even, garbage was running a little down, sewer was up. It's hard to say at this point why there was such an imbalance. I'm going to have to go through the audit with a bit of a more fine-tooth comb. Like I said, I just got it this morning, so I haven't been able to completely review it. The next year, so FY 13-14, general fund hole getting bigger, road use and local option go in the hole, debt service goes down, proprietary goes up, but a lot of that is probably money coming in for capital projects. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. I have not tied this out to the bank statements yet, so I can't tell how much is water, how much is garbage, how much is sewer. That will be coming in the near future. Whoops, wrong way. Okay, 14-15. General fund hole still getting bigger. Local option and road use have gotten bigger. Debt service is now negative. Proprietary is dropping. And again, I think it's still propped up by borrowed money and by grant money. So I'm going to try to untangle that and make sure that those got where they were supposed to go. It looks like they got into the correct funds, which is a good start. FY 15-16, general fund is getting severely negative. Special got pulled out, so that's good. Debt service, it's barely negative, so that's not terribly concerning. That's something that could be corrected easily. And proprietary is still draining out, which is a bad thing, because it's what has really been floating the city across those years. Now, fund balances are only half the battle. So fund balance is on paper. How much money do we say we have based on the money that has come in and what we've spent out? Okay, so think of fund balances as the city's accounting. Here's what we say we have. Bank balances tell the other side of the story. It's how much money you actually have laying in the bank. So we try to tie the fund balances to the bank balance. In a cash basis city, which is what Blakesburg is, it's a small city, you have no reason to worry about things like depreciation or forward carry liabilities, all these high-level accounting concepts that I don't even understand. There's no reason for a city this size to deal with them. So usually your bank balance should tie to your fund balance, or it'll be pretty close. It'll be off by a couple $1,000s maybe in any given month because of carryovers for payments, but it should be pretty close. FY 13, and just a note on how the money is carried in the city. So there's several reserve funds. You can see the bottom three are reserve funds. So that's money set aside for a specific purpose. They're kind of savings accounts, right? The top one is basically the operations checking account, which has everything else. It's general fund money, it's local option, it's road use, it's water, it's sewer, okay? So most of your money, the bulk of your money is going to be in the checking account. And that's what we have to keep our eye on over the years as we go through. You can see there was a little money for fire, a little money set aside for sewer, and some in a general account, which I'm not sure what that is, so Donna will have to talk about that. FY 14 at the end of the year, checking goes down, so we were at 139,855, we're down to 34,302. Fire is holding steady, sewer is holding steady, general accounts holding steady. No money came in and they basically just gained interest. Same thing in FY 15, holds pretty constant in the checking. The money market just gained interest, sewer just gained interest, general account just gained interest, and we added another bank balance, which is a library building account. That didn't exist, at least in what I have in bank balances before. So it looks like that just came on this year, and I'm not 100% sure what that is outside of just for the library building. That's all I know. FY16, checking is still holding firm. The fire is still there, just gaining interest. Sewer has been kind of split into two. Now there's a separate one, and there's been a big withdrawal of $9,000 out of the first sewer savings. So that must have gone to a project, I'm assuming. So the reserve got used for what it's for, which is capital improvement. General account stayed the same. Library building had a $1,500 withdrawal, so it's just got a little bit left. Now that's kind of where I landed with bank statements. I haven't gotten anything for those savings accounts from 17, because your bank, rightfully so, will not release those to me as I'm not an officer of the city. So that's something that we're gonna have to look through to see if we have those, and then I can get those squared away for 17 as well. The one thing I did get for FY17, which is the year that ended June 30, is the checking account. Now it's down, it was down at the end of June to 31,000. That came up a little bit in July to be about 37,000, and that was the last statement that I received. So if you guys have had the statements since then, I would love to see them so that I can finish out kind of what I was tracking. All the other accounts I didn't get, and it was my understanding that the fire money market had been liquidated when the fire separated, right? Okay. So I just assumed that to be zero, because that's what should happen when they split off in the township. That's no longer city money. Okay. The big concern, as you saw as we went, is the operations checking account, because that's where the bulk of the money is for the city, and that's what you use to operate day to day. So the big drop, I'm still working on exactly why there was such a big drop, but my guess is it was probably sewer capital projects eating up a lot of that, because it's maintained since then, since kind of the end of the sewer projects, or the end of the bulk of the sewer projects. It's kind of maintained year to year. Now the problem is right here. So you can see, I'll point a couple of things out. So this is fiscal 13. This is the audited year that we're going to have, that you're going to see on Wednesday. Okay, fiscal 13, the blue bar is cash on hand, so that's all bank accounts added together. I took all the bank statements, added the balances as of the end of the year together, and that's what we come out with. We had about $162,000, which is that first slide that I showed you for bank balances added up. That's all it is. Proprietary balance, proprietary fund balance. Now this is the city's accounting of how much money is held in your proprietary accounts. Proprietary, just call that utility. What it really is your utilities, water, sewer, garbage, okay? At the state, we call it proprietary, but you can just think of it as utility balance. So we had 162,000 cash on hand. 157 of that belonged to the proprietary fund alone. So that leaves very little left for general and special accounts. That leaves us, what, about $5,000, $5,300. So we have $5,300 that is not water, sewer, or garbage. The next year is where we start to get concerned. Big drop. So cash on hand, all bank accounts added up was $57,000. But we were showing that we had $236,920 in your utility funds, and that's water, sewer, garbage all added together. So this disparity is concerning because you're showing on paper that you have more money than you actually have on hand, which does happen. It's called deficit spending, and it's basically just borrowing money from one fund by overspending another fund. Okay, so we need to clean that up. You can see it gets a little bit better as we go, in that the gap doesn't widen, right? You're not getting any more money cash on hand. It's staying pretty stagnant because we go from 57,000 cash on hand to 66,000 to about 60. So that holds steady, but what starts to drop is the proprietary fund balances. So we'll have to still take a deeper look and figure out why those were dropping. But you can see when you say you have $200,000 in one fund, but you only have $57,000 on hand, something is getting overspent. And that's the crux of the problem, is that I don't know if there was just not enough tracking or if the council was not made aware in a timely fashion. I'm going to guess that's part of it. You know, there's been a lot of clerk turnover. You've been having trouble for a couple of years, so that's probably played into it. But now you can kind of see what I'm looking at as the issues that need to be corrected. We need to get the fund balances back in line, and we do that by digging out the general fund. The general fund is severely negative. It is budgeted to go more negative in the next year. So this is the fund balance worksheet page out of the FY18 budget, which is the current budget year. This was the budget that was submitted last May. This gives you 3 years worth of balance. So the top 4 rows is FY 2016, what actually happened. We have that, we know how much was spent, we know how much was taken in. These are more solid numbers. So we can see we were negative 68,625. I'll read it because I know it's hard to see back there. We had 59,000 cash on hand, which is what I showed previously. Now, as we go down budgeting, you can see in the general column, we start out negative, we only take in 73,000, but we spend out 98, makes our hole deeper. Now we're going to be at 93,000 in the hole. Same thing happens in 18. Start out at 93,000 in the hole, bring in 75, spend out 95, 96, and we end up negative 113. Now that's not actuals, that's planned, so it hasn't happened yet. So don't treat it as written in stone, but you can see the progressive problem. Now part of that is, budget was done for 18 in a bit of a hurry, so I'm sure we can straighten that out by amendment during this year. The nice part about the expenditure side is you guys control it, so you can cut as you need, and we can bring it back into a line, bring that 96 down closer to 75. You're not going to dig out of the hole overnight because you didn't get there overnight. You could see through my previous slide, it was a slow slide, right? And it probably happened starting before 13. It's just 13 was the first set of, that's where I started with mine because it's audited, it's solid numbers. But that's kind of what you guys are going to have to work at over the next few years is how to dig out of that. Any questions from the council? That's the last slide I have.
When you're, the audit that will come out
This week.
this week, did it show where the money was spent? Why we're in the whole scenario, what was going where?
Well, we'd have to look deeper at the individual line items. The thing that budgets and audits do is they group. We group things up. We're not seeing the individual. We got to go back to the books.
Okay.
And especially for 16 and 17, I'm going to take a real close look at because those are much more recent, and that'll kind of show us after all of the sewer expenditure was done, where are we still over? What's still soaking up most of the budget? Because that's what you're going to have to keep your eye on. That sewer project is kind of a one-off. We'll wall that off a little bit and set it aside and look at that by itself. Everything else we need to look at, your normal operations, what's going over. That's one thing we can do with the budget. I don't have the full budget loaded up, but if you just go through the expenditures pages 1 and 2, you'll see what in your general fund is big expenditure items. So just go through expenditures page 1 and expenditure page 2, look at it by line item, and see where most of your expenditures are. Now, in previous years in the general fund, I can say that public safety was a big expenditure. We zip back.
Should be about 13,000 some with our contracted with the Wapello County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
A little over 13,000.
Now it might be a little bit more
He's
contained
talking
than it had been
previously.
previously. Yeah, previously, as I understood, you guys had an officer, someone patrolling here, paid by the city, insured by the city. So it was a much bigger sink. And you can see in this year in particular, in 14, budgeted 37,000, spent 101. So that part of it will be reined in a little bit.
Was the officer gone already then?
No.
They were
Officer was
there
still
in
there.
13 and 14.
Yeah. It's my understanding he went out in 16, I believe. Like served part of 16 and then was ended. So the other item is general government. General government is kind of a catch-all. That's where a lot of the wages go. Wages for council, which are negligible, you guys know that. They're not terribly high. It's not going to change your budget that much. The wages for clerk, a lot of it could be supplies, or that might have just gotten projects put in there when you don't know where else to put it, because not everything. Cities do a variety of things across the state. We can't have a space on the budget for every single thing a city is going to do, because everybody does something a little bit different. So you have to group it, and things might have just gotten grouped into general government because they didn't know where else to go. But you can see that one also a lot of years. So 14 and 16 runs pretty negative. So there's some cleaning up that can happen there. Your debt service is coming to an end because that's your community building loan, and then that was like a police truck fire loan, and both of those are, one has been offshore, I think, right, to the fire department, where you guys pay them, and the other one I believe is done. The building loan I think is done.
Building is done.
Okay. So now, the other issue that we have to watch I'll bring up one more thing while I'm thinking about it. I'm going to kind of talk about it as a separate issue, but knowing me, I'll forget.
Got it on file, huh?
Oh, don't feel special. Everybody's got their own files. You guys aren't my only fire. That's the reason your balances aren't done.
I thought it was feeling
I
special.
know. Everyone wants to be special. I understand. It's fine. All right. The next thing that is a potential landmine, so we'll cover it now, is the sewer debt. Okay, with the balances and the proprietary dropping like we saw from 236 to 197 to 120, we have to keep our eye on those proprietary balances, and as I understand, this December. So you're going to make payments in December of interest only for both, and then you'll make payments each June 1st for principal and interest. So the proprietary or utility fund accounts have to be healthy in order to hit these payments, because we don't want to fall into default on this. Because with iPhone, I'm not even sure what happens. I'll have to talk to Tracy to see. But that's something to keep your eye on. Don't lose sight of that, because that's the next big hurdle that comes up. But it's there. All of these issues that I presented are kind of tied together. So if you solve one, it'll start solving others. If you dig out of the general fund hole, everything else will kind of straighten up. But we need to make sure that we keep the proprietary fund chugging so that these payments can be made. So that's one payment. And as you can see, so let's look at December 17th, or December 1st of 2017, there's a payment due of $1,450, not bad. The big one is in June, principal plus interest is $18,450, okay? The other debt is slightly bigger. And here you can see December 1 of 2017, got a payment of about $4,300 due. And then you have another principal and interest payment of $23,000, so a total of $27,000 that's due for over the course of the year in 2 installments. So something that I bring up just so that you don't lose track of it. You know, while you're fighting other fires, this can kind of slip.
I don't think there's been a raise in rates since the second phase has been done.
Well, and that's something that you probably want to do a study on. Take a look at what's coming in and what's going out, see if there's an imbalance. And then, you know, in the course of your meetings with public input, you can do a rate study and then an ordinance. Yeah, Bob?
I know that fee wasn't being properly separated out until just recently. So
Okay. So that should be part of
it.
it.
Might be.
And the fee, I'm assuming, is just for loans, right? Just for debt repayment?
Right.
Okay.
Well, we did receive a
CDBG grant. Yeah.
to cover some of this, as that's already been included and taken out of.
That is not, you don't repay it, so
Right.
it's already been figured in. It's already been figured
So we're
in.
still,
Yep.
that,
Because those have already been received. I did see those come through. I looked them up online through the state and saw that those were already paid.
And one of those had to be refinanced because of the project.
Yes, and this already figures in the refinance.
Is that complete now?
Done.
You think?
Yep, done.
Okay.
As I talked to Area 15 down here, Area 15 said both are closed out as far as draws. So the debt should be finalized, and I need to get the final schedules from Tracy at IFA, but this should be pretty close. Because preliminaries are usually pretty good.
Yeah, it'd probably be nice if we get a hold of those once.
Yes, and just talk to Tracy Skiebold at IFA, and he'll be able to send you a new.
He updated on some preliminaries a while back, but like I say, this thing got refinanced, so those are kind of.
Well, and it was still open to a draw period. The tricky thing about these IFA loans is they're kind of lines of credit that then lock into an installment loan. Because as you do your project, you have the ability to kind of use it as a checking account to draw down as you need money to do the project. And then once you have all your draws done, they cut it off, say, all right, here's how much you borrowed, here's your payment schedule, and then it becomes like a normal, like a car payment or a home payment, right? An installment loan.
I don't feel prepared tonight, but
And that's fine.
uh,
I'm not hard to find. You know where to find me.
I was going to ask Jason Myers, did we ever find out what our fire protection, what we were actually, the city's obligated to contribute?
It was right around 2,700, I think,
2,700 a year or a month?
a year.
A year.
7,000 some?
Well, Bill Henshaw came up with that from the state, or from the county, but what I came up with and what you came up with
When we
were almost
tabulated,
exact.
you know.
60 cents per, that was that.
No, that's not what the,
That's not what.
I'd have to
that
look
is.
back, we looked at that a while ago. I'd have to look back in my notes and see
it
what
was
that
around
was.
26.
But that's just for service, right? And then there's the debt on top of it?
So it's 60 cents per 1,000, correct? That we're-
That'll be in the.
Yeah, because that's gonna be your fee for coverage.
Yeah.
Your fee for protection.
The
And then I
debt
think
was.
you guys had a separate 2080 on the debt, right?
Yeah, that was only
Okay.
a 1-year deal.
That was a 1-year deal?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I guess what I
And
was,
Bill had gotten that worked out, I guess, with the bank or something. I don't know about that when I done.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we should find that out and figure out exactly what that sunk cost is gonna be. Because is that this year? Does that carry on just this year? And then
Just
it's
this
done?
year.
It's gonna start.
Two next year, but not very far.
Oh, okay, so maybe a payment in June or July. Yeah, some of those private bank loans are payments in July, so that would just slip over into the new fiscal year. Yeah, look.
I guess my point was, we're talking about have-tos here. We have to provide fire protection.
Yes.
We're incorporated, we have to have police protection of some sort. So between those two items, if the higher figure is correct, we're looking at probably 20,000 in have-tos, things that we have.
Well, just figure that as your conservative estimate. That's
Before
probably
we,
on the high side.
before we even start, government operation and everything else, so.
Yeah, you have a certain amount of sunk costs that just by the code are required. Now, that's not to say they can't be renegotiated, like with the fire department or with the county sheriff.
Fire department's gonna be hard because all the townships, everybody's the same.
Yeah,
rate.
yeah.
And the sheriff,
The fire departments are just hard, so.
we could probably,
Yeah, talk to the county, talk to the supervisors, and see if you can work something out there to kind of lower your fixed costs. Anything you can do to lower your fixed costs is gonna be more that you can dig out of your general. Because getting to, the big problem here is, I'm sorry, Jason, I'll shut up in a minute. The big problem with digging out of a hole, and anyone who was a teenager or went to college and took out debt knows it takes a lot to dig out. You can't get just back to even. You have to get back to even plus, right? You got to dig a little bit each year. So don't shoot for even. That's what a lot of city councils I talk to, the issue that they have is they're like, all right, we just need to break even. No, you need to break even plus each year. Now, it doesn't have to all happen in 1 year. Like I said, a multi-year slide is not going to be cured in 1 year, or these people are going to burn you with the tax increases. So you're going to have to dig out of it little by little.
We can't tax increases an option.
Well, I don't-
because
yeah, I think
we're taxed at the highest rate.
Yeah, I think you guys have maxed out all of your optional taxes. And it has been for many years. There's not, taxable value just isn't growing like it is in, say, a Milwaukee. You're not going to recoup it all in a year.
So I guess what you're saying is there are no sacred cows either. We have to cut whatever we can cut. We just go.
Yeah, you can see the imbalance. The imbalance speaks for itself. I don't know about sacred cows, that's a local decision, but you gotta look hard at everything. Everything has to prove its worth because it's 20,000 out of whack, and that's probably not gonna be found in just one expenditure line or one department. It's gonna have to the pain might be felt across the board. But that's local control. I don't step in on any of that.
Something we've been without besides fund balances is some clue of how much, IPERS, what we're spending on IPERS, insurance. There's so many things that we just, at least I feel, I don't know.
IPERS, the nice part about that is it's a calculation, so I can help you guys figure that one out, just based on, and the problem there is the fluctuation in wages because of the turnover in clerks. That's where it gets tricky, is you don't know from 1 month to another who's getting paid what, so planning it long term has been a problem, but we can figure that one out because of the nature of the calculation.
I guess what I'm after is these things that we absolutely have to pay.
The fixed costs,
We
yeah.
need to find out a lot better
Yeah,
to where we're at,
that would be a good start, is figuring out what is your must-haves, what are your things that you're legally obligated to pay, and you're right onto a bunch of them. Fire, you're legally obligated. Police, it's a little bit more gray about legal obligation, but you don't want to do without police protection. IPERS, if you have employees, is a must. Insurance, if you have employees, is a must. They're mandates. So there you've got most of the fixed costs down, and that's a great point, is you gotta start from there and then look at everything else.
Now, in the past, I'm just curious, in the past, at the end of the year, what money wasn't spent in other departments that the city would dish out
Yeah, so
would
if
be
they
brought
had,
back in?
if they had like a budgeted amount of
Yeah.
expenditure that they didn't get to, say they had 10,000 in allowable expenditure, they only spent 8,
Yeah,
that 2,000 should revert.
And they
Meaning that
bring
it
that
goes back
back.
into the big pot.
and that would show in these numbers here?
Yeah, that would, the reversion happens naturally when you make your new budget. So when you make your next year's budget, unless you have an ordinance that says, or the council operates in such a way that, say, I'll use the library as an example. Say your library has a $10,000 expenditure limit in the budget, they only spend 8, but they have an ordinance that states anything we don't spend gets rolled into a CD or some reserve account. Then you have to roll it, because you've set that up yourself. Now that can be changed. But usually what happens is, if they don't spend it, it gets wiped clean, goes back into the big pot, and then it gets reallocated next year in a
Yeah.
different way.
What if that department is, say it was library, is negative?
So if they've overspent.
Well, say that, well, yeah, basically, well,
Yeah, so they had
somehow
10,000, they
ended
spent
up
11.
negative, yeah.
It shouldn't happen. So that's the key, like, that's why monthly reporting is so important. What you should be getting each month is you should be getting a statement of, all right, here's the revenues that came in, here's the expenditures that went out. Here's how it ties to our bank statement, showing that what I'm showing you on paper is in fact what happened. Prove it with the bank statement. Once that's done, then you can look at, okay, what were these expenditures individually and how does it compare to our budgeted amount? So if we had $5,000 in library expenditures in the month of August, but they only have a $10,000 yearly budget, either they gotta be amended for or they need to control it.
Now, we had an account in the past that was negative X amount of thousands of dollars, and the budget, what they didn't spend in the budget would come back to the city. Now, how would they go about getting their negative back up? Would we keep what money they didn't spend in that account to help bring that?
You would have to basically do what's called a fund transfer on the books to say, all right, because that's kind of a side issue of expenditure, and it really depends on how you keep your books. Your negative spending or your positive spending in a year is one thing, but then when you do it year after year after year and you start to roll up a big negative balance, you'd have to do a fund transfer from the general fund, just the big pot, the regular general pot, into that specific department to clear out their negative. Or you do little by little by little, year over year, until they're back to even. So that's something that you do kind of in addition to their spending authority.
So, like, if you budget an extra certain amount of dollars to go towards.
Not as an expenditure, because this is a separate issue. You would do it as a transfer. Yeah, and I can work that through with you guys, because that one is a concept that even my seasoned clerks have trouble with, because it's unique to city government.
Another just discussion about transfers.
Sure.
In the past, your water and sewer money's been transferred to the general fund to pay wages. As long as that's documented there, that's a 100% completely.
As long as we have documentation that the employee that it's going to pay did some work for the water or sewer system, and that can be like your public works workers, or it could be the clerk, because the clerk does billing. Water billing should be paid out of the water fund. Sewer billing should be paid out of the sewer fund. Garbage should be paid out of the garbage fund. So that would be right and proper, but we need to make sure there's timesheets backing it up.
Okay.
So they need to keep track of their time. Once we have a couple of years of timesheets, then you can kind of start to say pro rata. Okay, for the last 3 years, they've spent 25% of their time doing water, 25% of their time doing sewer and garbage, and the rest of it on other things. And then you can just say, all right, we're going to transfer 25, what would it be the equivalent of 25% of their wages and benefits out? And then just work it that way. Once you have a pattern established. But first you got to establish the pattern.
You gotta have
Documentation for a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
After the first couple of years, you're not going to get dinged if you just do it pro rata based on history.
Now, when you do it, do you have to specify why it's being done and so forth?
Yeah, so when you approve the transfer, it's best to spell out, you can do them all at once. Like you can have 15 transfers in a resolution, but each one should be individually itemized, and the reasoning should be individually itemized in the resolution.
So in the past, that's happened, and if there might have just been a lack of documentation.
Yep. Yeah, could be. It's often missed in cities. That is not unusual. It's something we don't want to see, so don't do it. But it's not unusual to come across it.
That's what I talked to a guy from the town when they brought a street sweeper with sewer funds once upon a time.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
And yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Didn't want
That one's gonna be
stuff out
hard to
from
prove.
Getting into the sewer. Yeah.
It's a gray area.
Yeah.
You could say part of it
Right.
because, like you said, you're keeping it out of storm sewers, but not the whole thing.
Right. Just saying that there's ways of.
There are ways of manipulating it. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's something you got to guard against as a council member. Public, any questions? Did I confuse you guys nice?
Randy Burton's my name. Couple issues that
Sure.
you just spoke to. The council recently passed a resolution with the library
Mhm.
stating that if I don't spend what I'm budgeted,
Carry
I'm
over.
going to carry over. There isn't the funds to do that. We've never done that. That simply
Mhm.
goes back in, and that is your starting point for next year's budget.
Mm-hmm. Then that's maybe something that should be reconsidered by the council. I mean, that's, if it was, and I think that would happen at the May meeting.
They-
Remember, right? 'Cause
they
I was here for
approved
that
it.
one. Yeah.
They recently approved it.
So-
Secondly,
Well, that, just to finish that thought out, might be something, like you said, if there's no sacred cows, it might be something you want to look at. It's, anything done by resolution can be undone by resolution, but of course, I mean, you'd want to take input before you make any rash decisions.
yeah, well, I want the public this to really sink in. Mr. Myers negotiated the move from the fire department umbrella of the city to a private township entity.
Okay?
In his financial negotiation, he professed for some number of years they hadn't spent the budgeted category, and that overage that was unspent was claimed to be an amount that now they were seeking in monetary return to make the move. I said, no, it's just money that isn't there. We operate here on a bare thread. There's barely enough to pay wages and do our services. Never is there an extra carryover. The last item that he was speaking to, I'm going to use the cemetery.
Well, with that, hang on one second, sorry.
Yeah.
So with that, I don't want to lose my train of thought here, because that often happens to me. So if the fire money has already been moved out of the city, you could negotiate with the fire department if some kind of clawback is required, or if it would be desired. And then it's up to the fire department, because as of right now, the city has no more claim to that money, it's been
No.
moved. But it's always open to negotiation, trading money back and forth between legally tied together entities, which you have a 2080 with them. So you have some recourse there to say, we already have a partnership, we could move some money back and forth as necessary if it was an overpayment. So it's not out of the question to talk to them about it. But
I would
it's,
urge the city to renegotiate because you got took into the cleaners financially on this fire department move.
Really?
Now, the last thing I want to speak to is the cemetery issue, which
But it's a-
he didn't mention it by name, but we operate a cemetery. We sell less than $500 a year in graves, and we have no income other than that.
Right.
But yet it costs us $8,000 a year to mow.
well, and that would become an issue of, is there a contract to mow? And then you could renegotiate that. So that's something. it's
Yeah, but
year-
it ranges in the 6 to 8, so
Right.
year in, year out, over several years, that entity has lost and lost and lost. And like you said, it gets to a point where those losses have climbed so much, you gotta stop the ship and say, we need to transfer and bring that back into a positive number.
And as a citizen, that's a good point to bring up, because we
Well,
can look at all areas.
If they're budgeted $7,000 a year, I'd like to know where the extra money was going.
Well, we could, and that's something you'd have to look into, because from the big numbers I have at the city level, I don't get a lot of that detail.
Because that should.
I see payment going out, it doesn't tell me why, it doesn't tell me how.
Because if it's not spent, it should be rolled back over in the general fund, right? It shouldn't be going anywhere else.
Depending on the action of the council. Action of the council can always change that. You could do a resolution to do a
Like we was
carryover
talking about the
provision.
library,
Yeah, a
like
carryover provision.
But I don't think the cemetery has a carryover provision, do they? Do they not?
Yeah, so it could be just an issue, it could be an issue of keep a tight accounting on the cemetery. Watch the money coming out and watch the money where it's going. So the city should still probably be cutting those checks, even though you have a cemetery board. They're generally not fiscal agents of the city. So the city should still be cutting those checks and should still be able to get a good idea of where those expenditures are going. Yeah,
It's my understanding that what we have negotiated with the people is so much per mowing,
mm-hmm.
and then they mow it as required, it doesn't need, so.
Then maybe-
I don't know that we've spent $8,000 on any given year in mowing.
6 to 8.
I say,
But-
it was budgeted, but I don't think, depending on how much mowing is needed.
No, and the cemetery's a great thing. All I'm saying is, you don't have revenue, given the troubles you're in, you don't have revenue to continue to do this.
So you could look at more of a rigid
We
schedule.
understand that.
You could look at more of a rigid schedule rather than an as needed. That's one way to solve it. Renegotiate the price, put it up for bid.
Mhm.
If it's a year to year, I mean, put it up for bid at the end of the year. It's make it competitive. There's options there. There's options there.
I attended a meeting of the cemetery board last week.
Okay.
And they were under the impression that they were, had an account balance of $8,900. There is no such thing as a cemetery account, correct? That's
There is
just
no
all-
separate account.
It's just a line
They-
item on the budget.
They would be part of, and this is just based on what I have, right? I'm in no way a complete expert on all of the guys' activity. Just based on what I see, looking at the bank statements, they have no separate reserve account, right? Because the reserve accounts were the ones that I showed.
Library building.
You guys have, oh, there we go. So there's the most recent one. So you guys have your checking, which is everything that's not, it's an all-in-one basically. It's your operations account. Then there was the fire, there was a sewer, another sewer, a general account, which I don't know what that is because it just says general account, and then a library building account, and that is it. There was no other delineated monies in what I have. Now, you could have been keeping a separate sub-fund of the general fund for the cemetery on your books. I haven't seen it in any of the financial work that I've gotten. So if it was being kept as a separate sub-fund, then we have a whole different discussion because then they may be entitled to a balance. But it just depends on how it was kept from year to year.
I'm new to this again, so I guess I'm asking you guys, the library building account or fund in there, is that the carryover? Is that what that is, or do we have?
I don't think so. I don't think so because it
No.
was more static.
Okay.
It wasn't like it was being added to on a yearly basis and then there was a withdrawal out of it one year. So it looks like it was more of a just a straight up reserve account for a specific
I wonder
purpose.
if that could be donations that have come in. And
It could be. I don't know.
I'm just guessing.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know based because I didn't see an attached deposit slip for that particular account. Because what I've been doing is to build the bank balances back is going all the way back to the check images. So everything that was paid out has a check image, everything that's brought in has a deposit slip. I've been trying to track those donations to the library, but they're a little bit trickier. Because usually it just says a name and then it'll have like a rounded amount, like $25, $20. I'm assuming those are either raffle or donation or sale of some sort of donated good as a fundraiser. Usually if it's a round number like that, that's what it is. But I'll need some assistance and I'm getting a list of things together that I'm going to send back to the city to say, what exactly is this?
And what you
Because
just listed is pretty much what it was.
Yeah, and I figured because there was a lot of stuff that followed it, like dance expenditures for a fundraiser, things like that that often followed it. So I kind of figured it was probably library donated money, but something to look into. Something to look into. Yeah,
One more
sorry,
question.
Mr.
On
Yep.
your graph where you showed cash on hand versus the proprietary being so high,
Mhm.
if a person receives, let's say, a large deposit for an SRF project,
Yeah.
and they spend out of that fund for ordinary city services and continue to do that, would that show that blue coming, lessening in money, and all at once now you've got a red graph that's way higher than the actual cash on hand?
It's not necessarily, because they were probably doing both. Like, probably spending for the project, because the projects
Some,
got
yes.
done. I mean, the projects got done, so there was money there. We'd have to track it back to see how much money came in, how much money went out for the projects, and I'm already looking at that. Because that's been pointed out to me before, how much borrowed money there was versus how much project that was being done. So I'm looking at that. That may be part of it, but I can't say at this time.
Is spending proprietary money lawful for general fund purposes?
This is called deficit spending. It is not outlawed by the state. It is not a item in the state code. So this is done, and it's not legal or illegal. It's gray area accounting wise, because this comes into an accounting rule rather than state law. We don't like to see it, but it does happen. And the important thing is to correct it. Once we identify it, which is what we're doing here, then go ahead and move forward and correct it. It's not specifically outlawed in state law, nor is it specifically outlawed in accounting rule. They're both kind of silent. So it's one of those things where catch it and stop it. and then move on with your life. And that's what we're going to try to do. Anything else, Mr. Burton?
No.
Good? Okay. Well, maybe something will come to you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm sorry, I just kept interrupting.
I think this is on there, we've talked a lot.
Who are you again?
Just so,
Before I started talking to Kevin, I had a pompadour like Elvis. Now it's all gone.
I'm getting smarter, I got a long way to go though. Just so people are aware of some of this stuff. We've talked a lot. There were, if my memory's right, there were 2 years where the city didn't report their debt to the state. It was mandated.
Yes, and that's called the Outstanding Obligations Report run through the Treasurer of State's office. There is no penalty for missing it, and that's probably why I'm sure it just got missed. Because there's a flurry of things due in the fall, and if you have clerk transitions, something's bound to get dropped. That has already been, you guys have been made aware of that. That was corrected last year. So we're going to keep moving on, but I think, 14 and 15 for sure.
Yeah. I
And
think
possibly
we talked
16,
about
I can't remember.
And then the other thing, and hopefully maybe to make some people feel a little better here,
Mhm.
I'm gonna keep harping on this. That AFR is supposed to be done December 15, right?
December 1.
December 1.
Yeah,
okay.
December 1.
I think you mentioned, and I'm very concerned about this because I don't even know about road use numbers right now.
Right.
You think we've got enough, we can get that thing right?
And more importantly, the street report, the street finance report, which is a reporting of how you used your road use money, that's due at the end of this month.
Right, and the last time I asked the council, I'm not even sure they know where the money's at. So
Well, we'll
that's a concern to me.
That's something we can probably figure out pretty quick. Because at least that's an electronic fund transfer into the
Yeah,
city's account.
We know
where it is. Now it's just me working with the council and with the clerk to figure out, okay, out of that money that came in, what are the expenditures? Because those aren't always as obvious. If you have an expenditure to, for instance, something called like McGuire Ironworks is one that I've seen come up. I don't know what that is. Obviously it's an ironworks. That doesn't tell me which fund it's supposed to go to. So those are the kind of questions that I have to ask. And I just talked to Donna about it and we're looking right now.
You think it's there?
Don't know. Don't know. We're gonna find out. I have the bank information, and that's the important thing because you can always build it out, and that's what I'm trying to do right now. But without being from here and without knowing what money comes in and what money goes out on a regular basis and who's being paid and for why, it's slow going. I was hoping to have it done by the end of July. Fortunately, a thing called GASB 77, which you guys don't have to worry about, lit my life on fire. So it's been a little slower, but I'll get that done. I'll get that built out. I'm about 3/4 of the way there. Any other questions?
I guess just as a citizen
Oh,
of
yeah.
town, maybe some other people kind of want to know this, and so that's why they're here. Given the financial state and kind of what's up there, it looks a little grim. At what point is the county, or what point is this not fixable? I mean, are we close to there? Are we?
No.
No.
Well, here's the deal. It's hard for me to say, but off the top of my head, my gut would say no. And the reason is if you're going to disincorporate, which I know has been bandied around. I've heard from supervisors saying we've heard such things and we're terrified. No, just kidding. They just ask questions about it. Well, they know as little about it as you guys do because it doesn't happen. Well, it's starting to happen more often. We have about 1 a year now. They are much smaller towns. We're talking people under 100 in population. A city this large, and I know you guys have probably never been called large.
That's
A city this large, the state would not want to see disincorporate. And any disincorporation has to go through the City Development Board, which is part of the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and they would have final say-so on whether or not it would happen. The reason I say no is that sewer debt.
They don't want it.
The county doesn't want to. Well, they're not going to take it. It could get ugly if we had to disincorporate with that, because then who pays, or who pays? Citizens would still pay because it is a legal debt of the city, but who bills it? How does it get paid? Does it become a special assessment against property taxes that you pay monthly like you would a water bill? Or does it get assessed by a third-party vendor who sends out bills? There's a lot of that kind of stuff that generally they don't want to deal with. We just had a city called Mount Union, a couple counties over, Henry County, disincorporated with a sewer debt to a company called Russ, which is a USDA-backed 2080 organization that does rural sewers. They really do septic. They are getting a special assessment against their properties every single year that they have to pay off month by month. And then if they don't pay it, it's a tax sale. So we want to avoid that. It's much better to pay now as a city than it is to go to the county, because the county is much more ruthless with how they handle things, because they go right to special assessment and they go right to tax sale. We want to avoid that. And I don't think it's not so bleak that you need to think about that yet. We'll worry about that in a little bit.
Who would be on the hook for that? Just would it be spread out countywide?
Same,
Just
nope,
the same,
it'd be the same. We would
same
wall
city
you
limits.
off in your little
And
space
that's us, and we over.
and assess the properties that were once the city of Blakesburg.
So,
Yeah.
so in other words, just to make it clear to everybody sitting here, it's not bankruptcy, we're gonna pay.
There is no such thing as
Okay.
bankruptcy in municipal finance in the state of Iowa.
So we are on.
There is
it.
no bankruptcy,
We're
just
on
as
the-
there is no parachute. We don't save you at the state level either, because I can't even get a laptop that works. I'm using my own.
So if you own property in this city, it will well behoove everybody to start trying to get along and get this mess straightened out. Is that a pretty fair statement?
The more that people work together, the better it's going to be, because then everybody's voice is heard. Now, the problem becomes when sacred cows do kind of come into the equation and people won't listen and they get stubborn and entrenched. And I know I come from a smaller town. Carroll, you're going to say, no, that's not a small town. Trust me, it's a small town. Operates the exact same way. You have people who have been at each other's throats for years who will just not work together. My advice would be drop that, or at least hide it. Hide it under a pillow. Come back to it later after all this is passed. Okay, work together. That's the only way we're going to get out of it. I would suggest the council works with the citizens and try to find ways to lessen the burden. You've got your sunk costs, find all your sunk costs, and then start looking at what you can cut or ways that you can raise other revenue. Those are your two options. I mean, accounting is very basic. Bring in more money or send more money or send less money out. Those are your options, up or down. So,
And our budget has literally been within a $3,500 difference over the last 12 years.
as far as the budget, yes, it probably could stand being looked at.
Okay.
As you can see, I only have 2 years here, but these are budgeted figures. 75,866, or 73,866, 75,332 coming in, 98,300 going out, and I think that's 95,800 going out, something like that. Let me look. 95,800 going out. So yeah, you're right. It has been pretty close. But what that tells me is maybe you guys could start by taking a stronger look at it. Maybe it hasn't been given quite the hard look that it needs from year to year. So start this year. Start with your FY18 budget in progress. Just remember, you can change your budget during the year. It's an amendment. It's done all the time. I get $700 a year to look over. So look at doing an amendment process to start cutting expenditures right away. You don't need to wait for next year. I mean, as much as you can. Next year is going to be your big moving year, because that way, you don't go quite so hard on the blind side. But it's something that you can start moving right now. Anybody else? Is anybody going to try to stab me?
Don't kill us.
I got a question
Sure.
about, and we've debated this off and on for a few months, about the water bills have been a total mess.
Yes.
And I realize there's a lot of money on the books that hasn't been billed for or collected.
Hasn't been collected.
Now, how, it's one thing to say, okay, you're gonna have 2 months to pay this, or you're gonna have to start
Set up a
paying
payment plan. Yeah.
If these people have a brain in this town, they're gonna say, I haven't been paying, if they hasn't paid that water in 5 years, how do they think this town's gonna make them pay for it now?
Yeah. Well,
I
it's
don't see
in
that.
the ordinance. There should be a methodology for late accounts. If there's not, make one. Right?
There is.
There is,
Okay.
they just don't enforce it.
Then enforce
Yeah.
it. Enforce it. You know what? It is not fun, especially in a town this size. And I'm going to call you small again. I'm sorry, but in a town this size, you got to look somebody right in the eye, and that's tough. In Des Moines, they just come in nice and sneaky and silent when you're at work. You don't see anybody, they cut you off.
Well, in town, they take a police officer to
Right.
work in certain areas.
Well, in every city,
Seriously.
yeah, in every city, there's going to be areas where it's tougher than others. But here, it's even worse. You know the people personally. You've probably known them for years.
And steps have been taken to do that, to get people to pay. We've been a little slow in the enforcement of that as well. But letters are being sent out to where they're going to be notified and they're going to have 10 days or we're going to start shutting people off.
Yeah, and the first
That's
step.
coming up within the next week.
the first step is predictability. So set up a payment plan, set up the consequences for non-payment, follow through on the consequences for non-payment.
Steps 1 and 2.
Yeah, you have to, and you guys are already setting up your payment plans, or at least issuing the late notices.
Payment plans have been set up. I mean, they're
And then just
passed out.
make sure that they're adhered to. If they're not adhered to, follow your ordinance as far as cutoff. It is a harsh business. I've been a debt collector in my life. It is not fun. That's why I'm no longer a debt collector. Now I'm an impudent state employee.
Well, so I was thinking about running for the board, for the council,
Sure.
but I want to know before I go into it, are they going to have any legal rights? I mean, are they going to say, I've never paid these in the last 8 years, why should I have to pay them now? Because I really don't understand how this city thinks they can make people pay.
I mean, there's no
They
right
haven't.
there's no right to be a free rider. If that's what you're worried about, them saying, well, past
You would have
the city not following-
expectation that you would need to pay.
well, the city not following their own ordinance for the past years doesn't mean that when they start to follow it, that I get to just skirt. No.
New
No.
sheriff in town.
Well, yeah, and if you get a service, you pay for the service, right? And that's kind of the expectation. When I turn on my tap and there's water there, I got to pay the piper at some point.
Yeah.
It doesn't come for free. And I don't know of any court rulings that speak to that, but I would just talk to the city attorney or the League of Cities about that. They're much more knowledgeable about that
That's
stuff.
what we have an attorney on retainer that if somebody files a lawsuit, they will.
Well, and that's
that's
a question you guys could ask to the League of Cities. Since you're a member, it'd be a great thing to ask them is what methodologies do other cities have in place for this sort of thing? How far out of whack are we with the norm? Take a hard look at your ordinance, take a hard look at your enforcement tactics, and work that with the League of Cities. They're very good on utility issues.
Plus, they can be certified to their property taxes.
That I don't know.
Yes, they can.
Yeah, I'd have to go into that.
I'm a mentor for the league.
There you go.
City clerk for 48 years, and yes,
Yeah.
I was here for 34 years. They can be certified. I'm doing it now
You have to
for
go through
another city.
You have to go through a lot of steps. That's
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
but
So you got to have your ducks in a row. If
Yeah.
you want to do that, you got to document. Otherwise, you're going to leave a big old loophole that someone's going to drive right through.
Yeah.
That much I can tell you. Anything that you certify,
Once you start it, it's very,
from derelict properties to trying to catch up on assessed fees, you got to document over a set period of time. So make sure that your documentation is airtight about how you tried to contact them, about the responses you've gotten, about the steps you've taken.
That's what we've discussed, all of
So-
those being sent out certified.
There you
bills,
go.
So they have to
Yes,
sign
right.
for them.
That's a good start.
Sign for it.
That's a good start. There's no denying that you got the letter when you signed for it.
Jason, I'll just ask you, Jason, and the number's not close. I'm just curious. In my mind, right now, it's not as high as a lot of people think. What's the approximate amount of water bills that would do on it? Just dollar figure. 11,000?
Pardon?
11,000, close.
Oh, no.
Might be a little less.
More.
It's more? Okay.
Okay.
I stand corrected. I was wishful thinking on my part. Okay.
That goes along.
I like the optimism. I'm not used to Kevin being optimistic. It's a whole new league we're trying to look at.
Well, I'm so pessimistic.
Well, that goes a long way with getting out of it.
Well, and it's
And also maybe cleaning up the town.
Despair.
little by little. I mean, everybody gets it in their head when there's a hole like this that we got to do it all in one shot. Little by little by little by little. Otherwise, you're going to end up with nobody with the ability to pay and an even bigger hole. So you got to go little by little, try to dig yourself out the same way you got in over time.
It's been discussed, and Randy, there is a free service. They've come in and tell you what your water rates probably should be, correct? And that's the- Just the Iowa Rural Water Association.
They'll do a rate study.
They'll do a rate study, and we probably, that's something we definitely need to look at going
I would
forward.
look into doing a rate study.
Jason, you asked for that 3 months ago and nothing's been done yet.
Well,
We're going forward. That's
Move
what
it.
Ted's here tonight to let us
Move it
know.
now. I mean-
And we're going now.
there's nothing stopping you at the next month. Get it on the agenda. Move it forward. Talk to them, contact them. Anybody, any of you guys on the council, go ahead. Mr. Leffler, move forward. Talk to them.
Absolutely.
Get them here. Get them here. Yeah, just put it, you're gonna have a 1 month lead time. So just get it on next month's agenda. Move forward.
just put it on
There you go. See, we're working together already. Moving it forward. It takes the entire city.
I have a question
Yeah.
legal notices, why they are not published in the paper, the expenditures and so forth.
That has been,
Apparently, isn't that a state of Iowa law?
that has been brought up in the audit, and I've already talked to the council about that needs
But
to
where
happen.
was the state of Iowa when it never appeared forever?
We have more implied authority than we have actual authority. Home rule in a city is huge and all encompassing. If I wanted to shut you guys down, I could. God help me, I would park my car out on city limits and tell people not to come in, but I have no legal authority to do so. So the state has much more implied authority than we have actual authority to meddle in the business affairs of the city, right or wrong. And that's, we know a lot of stuff happens, we just don't have a recourse to do a lot about it until an audit comes along where they can come in and say, here's what you're doing X, Y, and Z, and we need a follow-up program. They'll check in. So that will be corrected in the future. Yeah.
Going back to that, there was an audit done, I believe, 2012 was published. 11.
Yeah.
There's, and we talked about this. You see the, and I've been
The
told by
manager's
the auditor,
comment.
but the auditor has no enforcement authority.
Very little.
They can
Yeah, very
recommend the city, and Bob's been pushing for it, like we need at least 2 or more people signing checks.
Mhm.
We need more oversight in there. That was suggested back in the 2011 audit. Nothing done. So I guess my point is, what's it gonna take on this audit? Should everybody, I'll just say it this way, everybody here needs to sit down and read what they say we should do.
When it comes
and
out
more or less
Wednesday.
demand it be done,
There is a
because they haven't been doing it.
And Kevin's talking about, there's a section of the audit that comes after all of the financial gobbledygook, all the numbers up front, that's in plain language, right? It's paragraph form. Anyone can read and understand. You might not understand everything being discussed, but it clearly lays out problem, solution, right?
Right.
And then response from the city, okay? Oh, perfect, yeah. So, right here, it'll give you, well, yeah, this is the findings, but it doesn't, okay, there we go. Here's a good one with the recommendation. So, water fund, debt service fund, garbage fund had deficit balances as of June 30. Recommendation, investigate alternatives to eliminate these deficits in order to return these to a sound financial position. That one's a little bit more amorphous, but that's what we just talked about. So it's plain language that you can understand, both problem and solution. And then hold their feet to the fire, whoever is on council come November after I've scared everyone away. But just hold their feet to the fire, and council people, hold yourselves accountable to get it done. I know that there's a lot of other stuff going on, and you're taking on an extra responsibility, but it's a responsibility. You are an official of the city. It's your job. It's your highly or super low paying job, but it's your job to enforce these policies.
The questions or the faults that were found in
Yeah,
11
management.
were starting to get addressed, and then we got slapped with another audit, and then we had
Well, and
clerk issues.
It's stuff that, I mean, this
It just
happens in
went-
every small town. There's got to be carry through. I mean, regardless, you're going to lose
Yep.
clerks. You are going to lose clerks.
I
It
think
is.
it just got lost in.
Well, being a clerk is a thankless job, and there's going to be turnover, but you're not ignorant of what needs to be done, so it needs to be carried through regardless of what happens here, regardless of personnel-wise what happens. So just make sure you keep your eye on the ball, make sure you have a list of them, and that you're checking into what's being done monthly, or at least bi-yearly, quarterly. I mean, put it on some kind of schedule to just go back over the comments that they find and get a progress update. Where are we at? How are we addressing this? Formality helps. Like if you put it on an agenda, that helps move the conversation along. If you just discuss it amongst yourselves while you may be making action on it, that doesn't help move it along through citizen pressure. Put the pressure on yourself. That's the only way I get things done.
I guess
So I have to come to Blakesburg, so I got Blakesburg stuff done.
I guess going to that point, Jason, it seemed like the audit previously, I mean, it was done it didn't take
In
3 years. Yeah, I mean, it was.
Well, and this one was unique. This one was unique, and it will be a great learning experience for the state auditor's office as well, because I don't think we've seen one quite like it. That a private firm, not that your city is unique. Again, I'm not going to call you special in any way. But the fact that it was sat on for 3 years is unique.
Yeah.
That is interesting. We don't see
Anderson
that.
Larkin, this is my opinion, I'm good at giving it. Anderson and Larkin should have turned that over to the state. I got a pretty good idea of what they were asking, the times they tried, within a year. That's just my opinion, and a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened.
It has been a learning experience, and definitely the delay forces the hole bigger because the problems aren't brought to light as early as they should be. Or you could say you can't make a complete beeline from one to the other, but it's pretty safe to say if the issues are brought up in 2014, when the audit should have been done, we're at this point in 2014, not 2017.
Right.
That much I can say for certain.
And since we're talking money deficit, and I brought this up, I've got numbers in my head I think it's gonna be. As far as I know right now, city did not furnish information Anderson Larkin has requested. Now, that's in my head just simple. I don't know why, it really doesn't matter, I guess.
It doesn't, yeah, at this point.
Anderson Larkin didn't work for free. We wrote him a check, and I'll get the number one of these days. The state of Iowa does not work for free. We're gonna be double billed on this audit simply because the city didn't respond and give Anderson Larkin what they needed to get the
Are you telling me you're
thing
gonna cut me
done.
a check for coming down here? You're telling me I'm gonna get a check for coming down here? You
37
just said it. State of Iowa doesn't work for free. I
No,
mean,
well,
the auditor.
good. Jason donated us $30 in pay.
$3,750 is what Anderson Larkin was paid. I got that from Alex Barr.
You got that number today, so $37.50. Let's just pick a number out, whatever the state bills. It's going to be money we shouldn't spend.
Yeah, and that is a concern, and that's why it's important as a city official, when you get a request, get it done as quick as possible. That's the best way to save money. Best way to save money. Yeah, Bob?
I'd like to ask Jason now, they do other service for us. This was split out.
This was split out as for the audit, as
That was
pertained to
August.
the audit.
And it was how much?
$3,750.
That's less than I thought it was.
That came from, well, they only charged us half.
Well,
That came from Alex Barr through Brian Morgan. I stopped and talked to Brian at the county office today, and I asked Brian, I said, I'd really like to know how much we paid them for that. He said, well, I know a guy. So,
But you shouldn't have to pay Anderson Larkin to do payroll reports. That's the clerk's duty.
that's right.
You should not be paying an accounting firm to do the clerk's work.
Well, these are things that can be looked into. I mean,
That's stuff going forward,
hey,
right?
put it on the list. Put it on the list. That's one of those no sacred cows. I mean, anything you can find that might be an extra expense that's maybe not necessary. Now, for the time being, with clerk turnover, I mean, getting a new clerk started, maybe you keep it for a little bit and then tail it off once.
I've offered to help for years.
Well,
They don't want my help, so.
It gets dicey. I mean, small town politics being what it is. So
Yeah.
we know how it is.
It
But
gets personal, yeah.
the important thing is just try to move the ball forward little bit by little bit.
Mhm.
You don't have to change the world tomorrow.
Personal no more.
Yeah.
Being able to see like the spreadsheet there with the expenditures and stuff like that.
Yep.
If there was some way, because going forward,
Mhm.
we're going to do our checks and balances.
Yep.
We're gonna have a list of all the bills that came in for the month,
Mm-hmm.
what was paid for the month, and what our balances are for the month.
Hopefully.
If that can be on a spreadsheet,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have to be printed out and given to everybody, but I'm sure the council wants it from one month to the next month on, this is what we did
Yeah.
last month, and this is where we're at right now.
It should be
That
part
it
of
can
the,
be posted in the front
Well,
window, and anybody that's out for a walk.
and it should be part of the monthly council packet.
Mhm.
So there's some way that you could work
But I
on
think
disseminating it.
the
Yeah.
public as a whole, with our unique situation that we have, the more that we have, that we can visually see
Well, and I don't,
something being worked on or working towards.
that's something you guys have to hash out locally here, but I mean, there's one solution offered. It'll help hold you guys to the fire and it'll help everybody else come up with ideas, so.
And it should all be done on home rule ledgers and everything, so it
Yeah.
all goes together with the budget and everything else.
Well, I mean, we need to put some methodology in place.
Right.
I don't really care. I'm not a stickler for how as much as that it gets done. So like, we need some form of accounting, whether it be a proprietary system bought, or it's a spreadsheet someone makes, or it's a paper ledger. Fantastic. It just needs to be religiously held to. It needs to be done rigorously every single month. And that's going to start with, I mean, you're going to be placing a new clerk at some point. It needs to start from day one, and it needs to be enforced top down. You know, that doesn't mean, being Stalin over their shoulder all the time, but monthly, a report has to be demanded. It can't slide, because that treasurer's report, and that's the treasurer's report is you're doing a bank reconciliation, so you're balancing your books to your bank statement, and then you're balancing your expenditures to your yearly budget to see if you need to amend. That should be done monthly. That has to be done monthly. If you miss a month, the next month is twice as hard, the next month is 3 times as hard, snowball rolling down a hill. So every month, that has to be done.
By
And you got a
fund,
perfect opportunity with the new clerk coming in.
by fund,
By fund,
right,
absolutely. By fund, and then the expenditures by line item.
exactly.
Tie them to the budget line items that I have in the state budget so that you can see where are you compared to your budget.
I think this council has failed in not asking Jane for help.
Oh, that's okay.
I
I
know, I listened to the last meeting.
Okay?
I know she was put down.
Mhm.
I think this is totally wrong. This is a citizen of our town.
Mhm.
Has volunteered her help. She is one that has done a job for years. And I think as council, as a town, that's totally wrong.
Well, and you have a November election coming up. That's the time
Yes,
to make your voice heard.
definitely.
You're gonna have a spirited, it sounds like, there's gonna be some contention. Some people are running, which is good. I don't like anybody running unopposed. It's un-American. But that's the time to make your voices heard. If you're uncomfortable with something that's going on and you feel it's the council's fault, cast your vote accordingly. That's your right. So that's one way to do it. And
Yeah. You said it earlier.
Bill Mitchell did ask for her help
well, and
just a few months back, and then he
And
was
that's-
put down on Facebook. a little
that's
bit.
fine. That's fine. And here's the
so
important thing.
There's why
Well, you need to spend less on.
No.
Here's the
I
important
don't get on Facebook. I don't have Facebook.
Here's the important thing. Here's the important thing. All right? Quit being anonymous. Right? Quit being anonymous as a council person and just hiding behind the council did this, the council did that. Quit being anonymous online. I'm 35 years old and I don't touch any of that stuff anymore. It's just poisonous. So just try to work together instead of letting all this old stuff fester, which kills towns. I've seen it happen. I just witnessed it a couple miles east of here. Murdered the town of Mount Union because they could not get past their
They
differences.
wouldn't talk one another.
They hated each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, they did.
I have never been to a more poisonous budget protest.
Ted, you said it best.
It's
It's
gotta
gonna
get
take all
past it.
hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Everybody's working together.
Amen.
The
So
White
we-
Walkers are at the gate.
Yeah,
They're coming. Here they come.
I don't watch that. I get the right. Just it's a town killer.
And I'm not looking for a job. It just breaks my heart to see the city.
And I understand.
34 years and everything was in tip-top shape, and then poof, it all goes, you know,
Well,
and it's so easy to fix. That's
It's
the problem.
it's something that's going to be fixed moving forward. So just work together as a team. You know, and if your help is not taken, don't take it as a personal slight.
Oh, it is
Just
personal.
keep,
I know
but you
that.
gotta let it go.
I've been told that.
But you gotta let it go.
But I'm a taxpayer, so it's
Keep-
hard to let it go.
keep trying to move it-
have a mess like this.
But keep trying to move it forward, and then if you think a change is needed, November's the time. Okay? You can always vote. That's the citizens' right. Okay? Council is your representatives. If you don't feel they're representing you, out the door. Not saying that I want any of you guys out the door, sorry. But that's the way it works.
Stop by the desk counter.
Yeah, Kevin.
Pick up
I guess
your
I got-
nomination papers.
Just one more comment.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody here wants to, if you want a little enjoyment, just go home tonight and Google Delhi and read that off.
That's where it can go.
Now, I've read a lot of stuff Mary Mosman said, and since everybody's here, who's ever's on that council, and I don't care if we got the best clerk in the world, council and mayor have to go in at least once a month and check stuff. And I don't mean for it wouldn't take 5 minutes of time. You've got to look. They had a clerk in there that over 7 years, what was it, $250,000,
Yeah, it was well over 100.
that they didn't have a clue. And simply because, like Mary Mosman says, most people go on council or they take a mayor's job and they come into a meeting and then they go home. And it just,
It's
there's got,
unfortunate, yeah.
just like we're saying, everybody's got to work together and there's got to start being some accountability. I mean, you know, if somebody's elected to do a job, you've at least got to be able to tell them, I'm going to try to go in and look at your bank account once a month.
Well, and you bring up a very important part. Verification. In a small town, it's tough. It's called separation of duties. It's extremely tough to manage in a town this size where you have one employee, really. I mean, you might have a public works person. You may have someone who's part-time, seasonal help. You really have one main employee, and that's the city clerk. Somebody from council, and you may want to set up a finance committee for the council that meets monthly in addition to this meeting and just goes over things to make sure that everything's tip-top. That'll help out immensely.
We had a finance person that would go over, but I don't.
Like a
know
treasurer?
what happened to that.
Well, and that's,
Jason, I talked to her one day, and I think my memory's pretty good. When the sheriff thing was going on, she was asking for the numbers, and they wouldn't even give them to her. I mean, what the hell's the sense of having a finance officer? That's what I mean. Somebody's got to start. I don't know if mad's the word to use. Somebody's got to start stomping down a little bit and just demanding that this stuff gets done. I mean, when I'm talking to the gal, and I like her, she done a good job. But when she's asking the mayor for numbers, and I know why we didn't have it, but you can't put somebody in a position of financial officer when she can't even get the figures.
having a person is half the battle. The other half the battle is
She
staying
was
on
a
it.
council member, right?
Yes.
So make a committee of the council that's multiple members. That way you got backup. That's, if you have 5 members of the council, 3 on that, so that you have an uneven, so if there's a vote that's needed, you can break it, definitely.
When we purchased the bond to cover our clerk and ourselves, part of the stipulation for that was we have 3 people that can sign a check, clerk being one, mayor, probably mayor pro tem.
Yeah.
Then somebody is reconciling these books. It could be one person or group, but the people that are doing the reconciliation cannot sign checks. That has to be totally separate.
Separation of duties, and that is absolutely something that should happen.
And we need to do that just simply to satisfy our insurance carrier.
Well, and
this bond.
And starting with this month, reconcile September, and then I would say, reconcile July, August, and September all at once, and then get the ball rolling forward. So at the next meeting, have a reconciliation report. If you need example reports, League's got them. Iowa State Extension's got them. I can get them for you if you need it. We don't have an authorized version at the state level because that's outside of our purview. That's an internal issue. But there are templates running around. Get one, follow it. That's what I would say. Start next month. That's one thing you can do real easy. Just get in the habit. Get in the habit.
Ted, is this open to citizens of the public, or does this have to be a council member and a
Data tech?
that you're doing a seminar?
You'd have to talk to data tech.
Okay.
Because you get like one person, I think, or
That's what it says.
like usually it's city officials and clerks. But I don't know. I don't know what their rules are. They ask me to speak sometimes, and since I'm a glutton for punishment, I go and speak sometimes. So I don't know what their rules are, but call John or Brenda Thompson with Data Tech. John Douglas or Brenda Thompson will be able to tell you. They have a little seminar. Data Tech is the company that does your utility billing software, and they're a good source. Another good source on financial matters. They're good with accounting.
If all the records are correct, there are many, many checks and balances. Your posting cards, your books, everything has to balance with your treasurer's report. There are many checks and balances.
Well, and the key, as it always is in these kinds of situations, is follow through. That's where it lacks.
Should be done monthly.
It should be. And follow through is where you guys can hold them to the fire to make sure that it gets done. So that's where it's a team effort. It has to be, and politely, not with insults, not with slander, try to hold people to the fire by just saying, where is it? Can we see it? It's not part of the council packet. Why? Anything else for me before I run away?
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
I appreciate you coming
More
down.
than happy. If I can save another city from going down on my tenure, I will do it. I've had too many.
I'm sure we'll be in touch again. Thanks again.
I'll pack up quick. Get out of your hair.
Any other old business? All right. Let's see.
Give me 1 second here, Mr. Meyer.
Okay.
I don't want to tear down while you're trying to do business. So
All right.
give just a second.
So you'll call me tomorrow?
What's that?
So you'll call me tomorrow?
If you want me to call you tomorrow, I will call you tomorrow. Right away, bright and early.
I won't be too early. No.
Well, I get in the office at 8.
I'll be here about 9.
All right, then yes, we will figure out, I'm gonna be sending you stuff that I can't quantify. I don't know where it's supposed to go for those past years. A lot of them look like they're yearly kind of stuff, so you'll probably be able to tell me right away where they go.
I'll be digging.
That'll be great. All right, proceed.
Approved beer and liquor license for the bank. You got any information on that?
It's all done online. I can show you that. It will add $390 to the city's coffers. We get approximately half of what they put. And I just have to go in online and approve it. But the council approves it. And I'll go in online in the morning and approve it.
I make a motion to approve the bank's liquor license.
I'll second.
Oh. Motion by Leffler, second by Thompson to approve the license. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 4 in favor, 1 opposed, due to missing. License is approved for the bank. Property at 311 Hickory Street. Talked to Bill, and he said something about there was a couple interested in the whole property, both the front and the rear. Rear meaning the house that burnt to the ground. That's all I know.
Okay.
That's all he said. He said you know more about it than I do.
Bill's talked to this a couple of times, and he was up the other day and talked to me. He wants a house in both lots, or he doesn't want it at all. He offered $36K, and he has asked the bank to inspect it.
Perfect. Sold. Absolutely, 100%. I know that was offered to the ball parents at one point. If we got somebody that wants to buy that thing and will give us $36,000 for it,
I'm all for it.
I'm all for it. Absolutely. I make a motion that we move forward with selling the property on.
Well, we gotta get a formal offer.
We have to
Right.
put an offer for it.
But going forward,
Yeah.
we're okay with going forward with whatever. That's not, is that why it was put on there? Is because it had been
Yes.
offered to the ball parents?
Yes.
I think I can speak on behalf of them, and I will say that let's move forward.
Probably after the presentation tonight, we probably can't be affording to give things away if we can sell it.
Nope,
Yeah, no kidding.
absolutely.
Oh, and he has no problem with cleaning up the debris that's left or anything.
Even better.
Basically wants it for his children.
So then make a motion to
Move forward.
move forward with the process.
I make a motion to move forward with the process of selling the on Hickory. 311.
Motion by Leffler, second by Chisman. Go forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 4 in favor, 1 opposed, due to missing. Fire Department 2080. All this is mostly about the millage. All the townships are going, including the city, to 60 cents per thousand.
Is that what's mandated anywhere, or is that just what everybody?
That's just what the fire department decided, just to keep everybody at the same amount. Townships can be a total of 62 cents per thousand, I think it was. And the city, the fire department can actually raise to $1. Don't quote me on this, but it's $1.20 something.
Is there any way we can get like a hard number of what that would be this year?
That I believe was at 2,700 or whatever.
That, okay, $2,700, and that's our
It's
fire
26 or
protection.
27, somewhere in there.
just trying to keep it 60 cents for everybody.
Yep.
It could go to $120 or $1.20 for the city.
If, you know, if they
If you guys
decide-
wanted to,
If they decide.
if the fire department wanted to do that.
And that is by, not the fire department itself, but by the fire board.
But they've given you guys permission, or the fire department permission to negotiate this at that.
Yes, but everything's ran through them ultimately
And each township would be bound
to 60
to
cents per
raise
gallon.
together or whatever.
Yeah. Some are already right at that, some might be a couple cents more, some might be a couple cents less.
Is this the same agreement that's already been passed, or is this something?
This
new
is
that-
just the one with the, same as everything was before, just with the 60 cents per thousand millage.
I mean, it's already been through the city attorney and everything, and been cleared with her, and
Yep, Bill took care of all that. And all the townships have the exact same 2080. And they had to go through the same process of proving their 2080s.
has it been approved by all the townships already?
All of them that say Blakesburg, if I do remember correctly. I was hoping Jimmy would be here because he'd know that exactly.
Bob, what's your thoughts?
I think we should approve it. How do you want the motion that we approve the 2080 agreement with the fire board?
Yeah.
Is there documentation showing the attorney looked at?
You'd have to ask Bill. Our attorney went through it, and that's why, and all the township attorneys had, or
And I don't-
townships had their attorneys go through it as well.
And I don't mean that to be mean, I just know that some things were missed, so that's why I wanted to ask.
Well, we can call Bill right now.
Like I said earlier, though, talking to Ted, fire prevention, the fire is a necessity, and that's something that we cannot do without. And if they could charge us $1.20 per thousand, and they're charging us 60 cents per thousand, I'm with Bob, I think that that's something we should definitely go forward with.
So are you gonna second that?
If he made the motion, yeah, I'll second it.
Oh, you made the motion?
I kind of asked you how you want it. I make a motion that we approve the 2080 agreement with the regional fire board.
I second the motion.
Chisman makes a motion to approve 2080 agreement, second by Leffler. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm going to abstain just because I'm an officer on the fire department.
So that's a good idea.
Yeah. And so that's 3 in favor, 1 abstain, and 1 absent. Motion carried. Appoint part-time employee. Again, I think you know more about this than I do.
We only had one person show any interest at all in the part-time employee's position. And I put that in everybody's packet.
Was with our clerk resigning, there was a call made to the League of Cities to make sure that we could still go forward with this, because in the job description, it did say it would work under the direction of the mayor and the city clerk. We don't have a city clerk, so we want to make sure that we could go forward. They confirmed that we could. And
Again, this is per bill. He talked to Mary, she does intend on quitting sometime in the future.
I think that there's been more happen since then.
It's a done deal. I have her keys.
Oh, she's already done?
She's done.
Oh,
She's done.
well, that's changed
Yeah.
just today.
Yes, it did.
Wow.
I was surprised.
Okay, then.
I do have some questions pertaining to this position, as we put what the duties would be. We advertised on August 22nd, it was posted. There's no wages put on there. What did we intend to pay this part-time employee? what hours will the part-time employee work? Because originally they were going to work with, hand in hand with the city clerk. Now that we have no city clerk. In the call with the league, they also said that they would, since this is gonna be somebody that's doing the job for the first time, the job of the clerk duties for the first time, that they would be willing to send a mentor. They have a mentor program, and they would be willing to send us a mentor to work with her, so we can have, lots of training and stuff done.
And this was from League of Cities.
That was from the League of Cities. Mary Beth at the League of Cities, from right here at City Hall this afternoon.
I'm all for it.
I know this is gonna be a hot button topic with a lot of people in town. And I think Ted said it best, that we all have to work together. I've had discussions with the only applicant we had, and I'm going to vote no, and she knows why. And I don't have any doubt that she will be able to do the job. And I have full confidence that I will be able to work with her moving forward. And I ask the rest of you people in town, we gotta go forward. We can't worry about what happened 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We gotta move forward. But I've told people in the past, and I try to live up to my word. And I told them that with all the stuff that has gone under the bridge, and I couldn't appoint this person into City Hall. But she's not gonna need my vote. She does have my confidence that she will do the best for Blakesburg. And that's what it all boils down to going forward, folks, is we gotta do what's best for Blakesburg going forward. And if anybody else wanted the job, we had one application, and we had one, and it was posted on August 22nd. So we had 10 days for anybody. And we got one. No, and that's right. There's gonna be it's a thankless position.
It's a very important position, as Jane can attest. And we've got to get a handle on this water bill program or whatever. We've just got it. It's got to happen, because we've been spinning our wheels a long time, and I'm guilty of it. I'm sat up here and maybe I didn't pound on the desk enough. We got to do something here.
I would say, though, however, that when we get to the next agenda item, which I believe is advertising for a city clerk, we've seen the numbers. I don't think we can afford a part-time position and a city clerk. So going forward, when we hire a city clerk, and that's what's going to make this even rougher too, is if we hire someone different. We have to thank this person, pat them on the back for the work they've done, but moving forward with the city clerk, then the part-time position be terminated. Because there's no sense in paying two people. When the state that we're in.
If the new clerk is gonna do the 32 hours or whatever that's
Exactly.
recommended, then
If
there's no
we're
point
hiring
in
a
it.
full-time clerk, then we don't need a part-time.
Exactly.
That the part-time person will be able to apply for the clerk's position.
Absolutely.
And
There's no,
would have to be interviewed and treated the same as everybody else.
You don't really need a full-time clerk.
At this point in time, yes, we do.
No, you don't.
Well, it'd be 32 hours, correct?
32 hours.
It doesn't take 32 hours to do the job.
Once we get it straightened out, my understanding is there's documents that we can't find, and documents were taken home. I don't know whether you remember, it was one of the meetings, an individual in the audience said we got papers all over the house, here and there. And then, I'm not going into great detail on this, but we asked for that stuff to be brought back, and things deteriorated from that point.
It should never be taken out of City Hall. The city clerk
I
is
agree. I don't
the
know
keeper
who-
of the records, and they should not be anybody looking at them
I
or
don't-
taking them out.
and when we interview clerks, that's something that's going to be discussed. In this position, I think we know that nothing leaves City Hall.
And I don't know that the council knew that was happening until after the fact. There again, I guess I apologize for not knowing what was going on.
And if anybody wants a copy of something, they're to request it in writing and pay the fee to get a copy.
I think I saw some forms in
There
there
are forms in there.
that I wasn't aware of until I pulled a couple morning duties up here.
Those were passed years and years ago that people filed.
Yeah, because I heard that there were records galore that went out of here a few years back. So that's not good.
And that's what I said. We're going forward now. We're moving forward. And that years ago, it's got to stop. And it stops now. It stops now.
We may have to wing it on what we can't get. Every time, and I like to talk to, or have the mayor or somebody check with the clerk, check with the city attorney. But every time we do that, we're costing money. Now, there's times we have to do it. Probably this property, we're probably gonna need to make sure that we do that legally. And, I mean, that's gonna be an expense that's gonna come out of it. But
Well, that's something you negotiate with the potential buyer, as to who's gonna pay for that.
But I don't know what leverage we have to get this stuff back. I don't think we can afford a full-blown legal action to try, you know.
Our attorney's on retainer.
And I don't know
I mean,
necessarily.
it shouldn't cost, I would say, if you have an attorney on retainer, it shouldn't cost you anything extra.
There's boxes, and boxes and boxes of stuff.
I mean,
I guess we
All
need,
heaped, and it wasn't just our
I mean,
previous clerk that did the dumping.
we,
we pay $800 a month in legal service. So, I mean, $800, I guess that's just May through August, but
you know, I think it's on demand. If you don't talk to them, I don't think you get a bill. Is that correct?
Right, she doesn't charge us.
so she's not on retainer. It's not a retainer.
No.
No.
So that's why I'm hesitant. In fact, I've gone and talked to her a time or two on my own dime at one time. Simply not to add.
Would it be more cost effective going forward? I mean, we're getting off the subject here, but to inquire about that.
Well, let's do this and we'll add that
That's what
to
said,
new
let's,
business.
yep.
So I guess we need a motion to either extend an offer to the person or a motion not to.
We go right ahead, because I need to be out here.
I think Donna's had her share of working for
I
nothing.
can handle.
I make a motion that we extend an offer
To the recipient.
to appoint a part-time employee to the only person that we've had apply,
Name names.
Patty Rowland.
Get a second.
One second.
So motion by Chisman to extend an offer. Second by Thompson. All in favor?
Aye.
One.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
3 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 absent. Motion carried. Advertise for city clerk. I think the pay rate of $10 or $10.25 or whatever it was isn't. I know we're looking at budget issues, but
That needs to be included.
We're not
That
gonna
needs to be
keep-
included in the advertisement, is we'll start somebody at 10:50 for a 60-day period. I don't know. Does it say anything different in the handbook? And because that, or in the ordinance book, because you're right, 10.50 an hour is not gonna keep anybody that we want. We're gonna need to pay a clerk, an actual pay them a wage, a living wage.
And I would like to see us have a period in there, I don't know what you call it, kind of like a probationary period, so
60 to 90
to
days.
try to keep us from, if somebody doesn't work out, so, you know, we can move on. Hopefully that won't happen, but
You can make sure too, it's an at-will employment.
Oh,
So that
you know, they, it is.
anybody on either
Employee
side
handbook
can.
states that.
So do I have a motion to advertise for city clerk?
Absolutely. You have a motion, I'd make a motion to advertise for city clerk.
Motion by Leffler to approve,
I will second it.
Sorry.
second by Chisman. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Advertise for financial officer. I really don't think we need to do this personally, but I think we do need somebody in the council to do it. At least 2 people.
That's what I would say. Per Ted's recommendation, we find 2 council members that act as financial.
I think 3 would be too much, just because
Can't
that
have
would
3 because it necessitates a quorum.
Exactly. So
Can't be more
that's,
than 2.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like I say, we need to start thinking about meeting the requirements of the bonding company.
Yeah,
They've been pretty,
the league told me that if we're going to hire someone and call them a financial officer, we have to advertise it, same as we do a city clerk.
Well, I vote, or I make a motion that we do not hire a financial officer. And then on the next agenda, the next meeting, we appoint a finance committee amongst council members. Is that something that, does it have to be council members? Could we have a 4-person
You can
committee
have
of 2
somebody out of the
townspeople?
community do it.
Could we have 2 community members?
That's what I was gonna suggest. Like he said too, if you have an odd number,
Yeah.
so if
So we
you
can
had,
do 2 council members and 3 townspeople
the
on an unpaid commission.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
agent,
volunteer basis to get us back on track.
Agent in Iowa has a real good system down there. I hope we can incorporate it here. They've got part of it on paper, and then it's transferred over into a computer program. I've stated this several meetings before. If we get this implemented and working properly, anybody can walk in here anytime we're open, ask to look at that, and maybe the first time you'll need a little help to decipher what you're doing there, but all that information is going to be there for you to look at and decide, you know, whether you think we're on spot or we're off spot, so.
Now, will this take, will we have to wait till the next meeting
Well-
to approve to appoint this commission, or could we take applicants?
We
and
can
have people
advertise
start?
for financial officer through the community, advertise for the community to put in whoever's name they wish, or whoever wishes to be part of it. to put their
That's
name
what
in.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Not advertise as for a paid position.
But it'd be.
And by advertise,
for
we can put a
financial-
sign on the door and that's advertising, correct? That's not advertising.
Do you think we ought to-
Then I say we wait until the next
Okay.
meeting.
Let's
and
talk to the League of Cities and see if they'll give us some guidance. And if they won't, maybe we'll have to talk to our attorney.
But I definitely think a commission's the way to go, as opposed to hiring a financial officer.
Oh, that's not to hire, that's,
Or appointing.
Appoint.
that's just to appoint. Okay, so you're making a motion to,
Basically table it for the next meeting, once we find out.
Once we find out what we need to do to establish a financial commission as opposed to a financial officer.
Got all
So
that?
I make a motion to table the advertising for a financial officer in lieu of establishing a financial commission.
okay, second?
Motion by Leffler,
Second it.
second by Chisman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
That's right.
I know. 4 in favor, 1 opposed, or 1 absent.
Material.
Cemetery board, not sure why that was on there.
They requested to be on here.
Well, we
Okay.
requested to be on here, Jason, and our main concern is we do need a secretary. It's been almost 3 months. I don't have one. We don't have a flood of stuff, 50 items a week, but we do have stuff that needs to be kept of record. That's why we're a board, advisory board. I don't see why it's so difficult to get a person. That's my question. What's the issue?
I honestly couldn't tell you.
Well,
I
now,
haven't
we
been
had a
brought
meeting.
into
Now listen, we advertised for 6 to 10 days for a position for a secretary. I got 2 applicants, which is fine. We was having a meeting up here last Thursday. Donna typed up the agenda, was posted,
About the meeting.
and we could not get in. So we put a sign on our door here. We took pictures. I called Helen Thulin, and we had it at Blakesburg Methodist Church in the annex. Lady in the back, Tammy, was selected. I did not vote. Mary did check in the League of Cities. Okay, that's fine. So there would be 7 of us. So we got the 8th one. So now I don't vote for nothing, no tiebreaker. We got 7 people, so there's never going to be a problem. So we got 3 new people.
Good.
Now, is there a problem with it?
I don't see a problem either way.
Okay. I've heard so much stuff, I'm tired of it, you know.
I attended the meeting, and everything they wanted to do seems the right and proper way to do it. If their president can't vote, it didn't make any sense to have an even number of people on their board in case. So for them to add another person was a great idea. For them to go and appoint a secretary, I think the question was, somebody told you that you had to have city approval before you could do that, is that correct?
Well, that's what I've been told.
But
In the original, in the beginning, when the board was formed, there's 2 people, 1 person here that was on the board.
Okay, and that's
Our
not the
city clerk.
case, they don't need city approval,
No,
they
I
can
wrote the
appoint their.
bylaws for them.
Okay.
and I got models from the league in several different cities, and there were bylaws. I don't know how they got changed.
And I don't know why, I'm going on 18 years. I enjoy doing it. I don't have a problem.
And you do a good job, Paul.
And,
That's
you
what
know,
I think.
anybody who wants to do it can do it. But I want somebody to come down if they want to do it when it's 20 below, you got about 4 inches of ice, snow, you got to find them places. Oh my God.
And I got a
Why no?
bunch
Why no?
because I fell on the ice mark in a grave.
But I guess
I mean, it's not really fun.
No,
And it's a thankless job. too.
absolutely.
Very
And-
thankful.
And if you guys,
And we clean the cemetery, and then we get calls, and we're told off, and we're threatened to be sued. That's why Cookie quit. She got tired of it. I'll be right honest, I don't care.
I said, it is a thankless job. Did you guys appoint your secretary after I left that night? Because I left early. You appointed your secretary, and that
Yeah,
doesn't
maybe
need
we know who
council
that is.
approval.
And, okay.
It's Tammy.
Okay, I'd like to have
Okay.
Judy. Judy has a little something here. She's been taking notes since we don't have a secretary.
Depending on what you guys put in the budget for the cemetery, we were told it was 8,000. So that's
That was just what
that
we
was
told.
just was told. Okay, but we have turned in, and it is in your bank account. We had a $50 donation. We have a $900 from Urbana Center
Urbana Township,
and we have put in a 300 veterans already.
303. So.
And we also have 8 plot sales that are pending right now.
And we need the secretary to do it, to put it in the books, and we need to get in our office where the stuff is, the main files and books.
So we need keys.
And I've got piles of books from Cookie, and I'm tired of tripping over at night in my bedroom. I have to leave it there, and the cat won't leave it alone.
We need keys to City Hall or to,
Both.
To both.
Because the door is different in our office. is different.
And the secretary did have those keys.
should have those keys.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just need to get you some keys and then let you guys,
To both doors.
To
We
both
gotta get a
doors.
key to the your door.
For
Okay.
Tammy, yes. That's what for Tammy. She needs to get in because she, yeah.
Okay,
that's
can you,
what you need, then I don't see any problem with.
I would like to put the rest of the board members in the minutes. If you would tell me who they are.
Okay, Tammy Johnston.
Is the
Thank
secretary.
you.
The
And
secretary.
Joyce is secretary, and Joyce Ray is a board member, and Linda Johnson.
Joyce Ray.
She's a neighbor to Jason. She's right next to Chuck. They got married Saturday, her and Loon. So, and she's very interested. She was very cordial, wasn't she, Boyd? She was ecstatic. You know, she's interested in the town. They want to live here.
And then also Boyd Britton, Dennis Saylor, and Judy Davis are the other
Yeah.
board members, correct?
Plus the clerk.
Yes.
Plus the city clerk, yeah.
Right.
So when we get a
Yes,
city clerk
city
hired,
clerk has to be on, yes.
would be the
Treasurer.
treasurer. Yeah, and
So until you hire a city clerk, is a deputy board member?
That's a great question. That's something we probably need to ask the League of Cities, because the position that was hired was just a part-time city employee. Who's going to be doing the clerk's duties, but I guess I don't know if
But
that's
she's
considered
not
a deputy
she's
clerk.
not the city clerk.
So
Yeah, we'll have to
we may
ask.
be at an odd number, an even number until we hire a full-time clerk. We'll have to check with the league on that. Is that something that's fair enough
Yeah.
for everybody?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, do you have a separate line item on your treasurer's report for cemetery?
Well, we do, and it is, the budget was $8,000.
I mean, on your monthly report, you have a,
Oh.
like the money they take in, you have a cemetery line item.
It should
When
be.
we finally get all
It
this together,
it should be, but
we'll-
right now, we don't have
I know that,
That's
yeah.
what we've
Because
been,
I've been kind of watching the receipts as they come through, and I know that there have been lots sold and.
We don't sell as much in a year as we used to.
Well, no.
But I mean, we do
but I know
have
that-
activity,
I know
we
that
do
that
have
has happened.
revenue, yes.
and it will be.
And you should get a receipt for everything.
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
Like I
Cookie
said,
was
that-
keeping track of it. I have copies of everything that we did in the last, I'd have to look for them, but I do have them.
like
We
Ted-
do generate some revenue.
Like Ted said, constructive criticism and criticism,
Yeah.
and making sure and holding people's feet to the fire, and that's what
That's right.
it's gonna happen. But we
Exactly.
need it to be constructive. For too long, it's not been constructive.
That's right.
I think you guys do a well of a job.
So do I need to make a motion that we get these for Tammy, or is the cemetery board?
It's just a
That's
given.
No, it's
that's
just
just a given.
something
Okay.
you're supposed to have.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move old business, so now we're on to new business. Jason.
Yes. I'm just going through some, or writing some notes. New business, any new business?
Oh, what did you say?
Any new business?
Oh, I'm speaking for the Corn Carnival. Would it be possible to turn the lights on in the park during the carnival?
I don't see why not.
Okay,
Just get with
That's
the
always-
city guy.
Yeah, we'll talk together.
thank you. I got bored and quit listening to you.
Really? We've been here that long, man. I'll tell you, a thrilling, entertaining evening. It's a night out in the town in Blakesburg.
Now, just let us know when you want them turned on.
Yeah, well, the electricity for the lights in the park
Mhm.
and for, will be the 22nd and 23rd of September. And the water.
The carnival's already here.
Helen, that would need to be the 24th because of the, also, because of the church service, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, but it's in the daytime.
The water
Yeah, but
is
they
on.
need
The
electricity
water's
for
on.
mines.
The water's on.
Yeah.
Water should
They
be on.
need
Just
electricity
like-
for
Oh,
mines.
yes, please leave it on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And somebody just told me the water is on.
Yep.
Yes.
And the garden club, I believe, takes care of it, or has the keys to that.
Excuse me. I have no water. I don't wonder. I used to because that.
Any other new business?
I don't know.
Then I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion by Leffler, second by Chisman to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All in favor, one adjourn.
Smell all over.
Whatever we do to help. Good luck.